Well, America is the bad place.
And it's only looking worse as we proceed. One of the quick headlines that I wanted to call attention to before we really dive into the show is that a number of states are experiencing a rebound in COVID infection rates and hospitalizations that is as bad as last November. It's really, at this point, your repetitive reminder that you should be taking the appropriate action, either getting the vaccine or talking to your doctor about getting the vaccine. End of story. So we won't harp on it, but it's yet again making waves, and people seem to continue to want to believe conspiracy theories instead of the facts that they've presented to them.
I've been using your line about this is a medical problem. It has a medical solution. If you are at all wondering what's going on, go talk to your doctor. I told someone, this woman had some concerns about like what it could possibly do to the reproductive capabilities of her 6-year-old daughter in the future. And I was like, that's a legitimate concern. I get that. It's, what I didn't say was that it was completely unfounded, but I just said, talk to your daughter's pediatrician. They know.
Yeah, I've found when you frame it in that manner, people at least pay attention to what you're asking, what you're actually trying to convey. It's not, you should do this or you're a horrible person or your choices are, ridiculous or anything of that nature. It's not passing any kind of judgment. It's just saying, look, here is where you go to get your questions answered.
As a liberal-minded person, there's a lot of things that can be rephrased in such a way that just gets the conversation moving in a much better direction. I've saw a list of things pretty recently, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was interesting. And I was like, oh, these are really good talking points, and it just turns things around. And perhaps I'll find them for the after show.
Yeah, it could be interesting to note, and maybe be follow up as well.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely put it for follow up.
The other thing I wanted to mention, and this was I only wanted to bring it to light because we're going to delve into a topic that could be a counterexample in many ways. But there were a couple of attorneys who brought frivolous lawsuits against or for fraud in the election, claiming widespread issues, etc. And a judge ordered those attorneys to have to pay more than $180,000 to defendants. So there's at least some positive action from the court system on something.
Yeah. This is like, hey, I'm going to give you a sticker right after I, poke a needle in your arm.
Yeah. So there were two real quick points. I'm going to just read from the story, and we'll link it in the show notes for anyone who wants to dive deeper. But from the article, there were two lawyers who went to court to claim voter fraud after the 2020 election, and they have to pay $180,000 to the defendants they just sued. And part of why I wanted to mention it is the judge stated that their lawsuit aimed to manipulate gullible members of the public and foment public unrest. End quote. And 100% true. I'm certainly not arguing it. I think the punishment probably should have been greater, but that's a whole different sidebar. But the other thing that I wanted to make sure I called attention to, because this is the piece that, for some reason or another, when you get into these conversations about election fraud, people never pay attention to this piece. The plaintiffs had no lawyers or experts that were able to support their claims of switched votes and government conspiracies. The judge called the lawsuit itself one enormous conspiracy theory.
Thank you.
And I wanted to harp a little bit on that last piece, very briefly, because I think we're going to spend a lot of time on our actual proper topic. Almost everything that I have heard repeated by the general public with regards to the 2020 election can be filed under that banner of conspiracy theories. When you are looking at information presented to you, whether it's listening to a speech or reading an article, if what you are repeating as fact is what a person stated, and that person does not have evidence to support that statement, it's nothing other than opinion at best. It's intentionally divisive misinformation at worst. Maybe outright lying for manipulation at worst, but still giving the benefit of the doubt to an extent. So I want to boil it down into a very simple sentence. If you're reading something and they don't cite sources that you can go find hard evidence supporting, it's bullshit, plain and simple. Did I miss something, or does that cover it well enough?
I thought that was succinct. That covered it.
I wanted to expand on it, but I don't want to make it a focus of a topic. You know, there are a lot of things that we can go into about how you validate sources, and I think maybe we do a show on how to dissect information, but now is not the time for it.
Yeah.
So I'll put that in as a teaser for this. Will be an upcoming topic. We'll do a much deeper dive on verifying and validating sources and understanding how to consume the information you're presented with, and maybe it'll do somebody some good. So with that, you actually had the recommendation of the topic, so I will let you introduce it. I did add a couple of links just for reference material, because I don't know, I had not kept up with a lot of the details. I knew the overall idea, but not a lot of the facts of the case itself. So I'll let you kick off our primary topic for this evening.
Well, I started this show with that America's the bad place and things are looking bad. And it's like, I still think we're in a better place than we've ever been before. But I think we're not we're about to, but we are currently experiencing some growing pains. And I think at the end of this, well, I think we're in a place where it's like at the end of this, I'm not sure how this is all going to play out, especially with the topic that I wanted to talk about, which was the Rittenhouse verdict and his acquittal. So there's not a lot that I even really care to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, other than I kind of want to use the sort of narrative that all lives matter people tend to use, and that is Kyle should have stayed at home. If he felt unsafe, he should have stayed at home. He shouldn't have been out there. But here's what I do know. And the facts are that Rittenhouse was a 17-year-old boy last year. He's from Antioch, Illinois, which is about 20 miles from Kenosha, Wisconsin. He drove down the day before to meet a friend. His friend had bought him an AR-15 style rifle. It's actually a Smith & Wesson M&P 15, which M&P stands for military and police. He said he went out to protect a car dealership from vandalization and provide medical aid. 17 years old. I mean, from my gaze, it looks like he wanted to go play some Call of Duty in real life. And he fatally shot 2 men and wounded a third. So he was charged with 2 counts of homicide, 1 count of attempted homicide, 2 counts of reckless endangerment, 1 count of unlawful possession of a firearm, and 1 count of curfew violation. And I'd like to... Go ahead.
It was just for clarification, in all of those he was found not guilty of, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. I'd also like to state that there are over 250 National Guard members that were deployed to the city of Kenosha on the 24th or the 24th or 25th of August. So I don't know what kind of help a 17-year-old boy is going to provide. The only people that were unsafe were the people that were shot by Kyle Rittenhouse on the 25th.
Yeah, I have so many problems with everything about this situation that it's been difficult to organize my thoughts in a way to think I could speak about it cohesively. Like the very first point, what was he doing at the car dealership specifically?
It's details about that are kind of murky, but the owners of the dealership deny requesting this, but there is thought that he was friends with maybe like the children of the owner. I'm not entirely sure, but what is being denied is that the owners of the dealership were asking for assistance from vandalization, because like the previous nights, about $1.5 million of vandalization, or what accumulates to $1.5 million of damages were done from arson and other damages.
And so the very first thing, any commercial establishment has insurance.
Yep, that's exactly what I thought.
There is no reason whatsoever to place yourself at a point where you are defending a commercial establishment ever.
Yeah. These are kind of the things that we need to talk about before we get to the real problem here. Because the real problem happened this month.
Well, I would actually say the real problem isn't just what happened this month. The real problem, let's start that over. The real problem occurred when someone had the idea that they needed to provide something when they were not in any way, shape, fashion, or form trained for or organized for said activity. He wasn't a part of a National Guard group. He was not sanctioned by law enforcement to help keep the peace. He was not requested. There was no reason whatsoever for him to be on site.
Yeah.
The issue that drives that type of response is, I think, really the first problem, the first major failure, which is realistically the pervasive thought that we as people, normal citizens, have any reason to defend anything other than ourselves at home, or ourselves in general, as long as we have a rational, legal reason to be where we are. And I use the phrasing a little bit loosely because defending oneself is very murky when it comes to legal issues. I am a proponent of, if you are going to own a firearm, you should receive the same training about de-escalation and responding in like force that law enforcement is supposed to receive and supposed to take into account and adhere to. But that's not the case here, and that's really a separate topic. But I wanted to kind of emphasize that while this month was a significant issue, the problem originates prior to the significant issue we're going to talk about.
Yes. The issue that we're going to talk about is a piece of a larger whole. But, so things that were problematic leading up to things that have been problematic leading up to the trial were some pretrial restrictions. So there's a hearing on the 17th of September where Judge Schroeder denied prosecutors' request to admit as evidence Rittenhouse's outing with the Proud Boy members and a previous fight he was involved in, finding that the incidents were too dissimilar to be used as any sort of evidence against Rittenhouse mindsets at the time of the shootings. On the 25th of October, Schroeder defined what testimony would and would not be admissible by both the defense and the prosecution. They were ordered that the men shot by Rittenhouse could not be referred to as victims, but they could be described as arsonists or looters if the defense was able to establish evidence that they were engaged in those activities that night. Judge Schroeder also dismissed the charge of curfew violation against Rittenhouse, citing a lack of evidence offered by the prosecution. And the charge of unlawful possession of a firearm was also dismissed, based on the ambiguity of Wisconsin's restriction on minors carrying rifles. I feel like that's a law that should not be ambiguous at all.
Oh, it shouldn't. I mean, the firearms laws in the states are ridiculously, horrifically written and enforced. And I say this as an enthusiast of firearms in general. Like I want to make sure it's clear. I have nothing against someone choosing to own a weapon, but let's make sure that you unequivocally know that the real reason you want to own it is because you want to own it.
Right. They're cool, not for self-defense, right? Unless you live out in the country.
And I don't completely buy that they are not for self-defense. They are not for self-defense in the scope of the way it is talked about on the national scene.
An AR-15 style rifle is not for self-defense.
That depends on your background. If you're former military or law enforcement and have training with that weapon, then maybe that's what you feel is best for that particular situation. I disagree with the thought process, but I'm not going to say that it could not be. Is it overkill for self-defense? Absolutely. Is it necessary for self-defense? Absolutely not.
So I can agree with you that it can be used for self-defense. Like you are correct. It can be. Is it the best tool? Like you said, absolutely not.
Right.
But
that's the crux of the argument, but that's not the way people want to phrase it.
I want to go down this sidebar just a little longer. Sure. The AR-15 assault, the AR-15 style assault rifles they're so popular, but they don't kill. I mean, they kill a lot of people at once. That's what they're designed to do. But they are not the biggest offender they're not the type of weapon that's used to kill more people. Handguns are used to kill more people than any other style of firearm.
Yeah.
So people want to talk about the AR-15 style rifles, which they are problematic, and there are some legitimate arguments as to why they are problematic, but they are not the only problem. The bigger problem here is that Congress won't fund any independent studies of firearm death and violence in this country, and the National Rifle Association is right at the top of the list of people keeping them from funding those kind of studies. That's the bigger issue here. So, if rocket-propelled grenades were available, that would be the thing that we'd be talking about because they are more violent than AR-15 style rifles. They're just not legal. It's just that that type of rifle is the most destructive legal firearm that is available right now. It gets a bad rap, somewhat rightfully so, but that's not our bigger. That is a distraction to the bigger problem.
The bigger problem, it really has a couple of major points that we can kind of conceptualize first, and then if they need to be delved into further, they can. One, you don't have to have any type of firearm training to own a firearm. That's problem number one.
It's a huge problem.
Problem number two is a little more nuanced in that there's no recourse or method cleanly to remove a firearm from a dangerous situation. And I have to kind of circle back and point to the problem with John Stewart, specifically for this one. One of the leading predictors for future firearm violence is domestic violence. If someone has any type of violent offense or history, they should not be allowed to have a firearm until such point as they can be evaluated appropriately by mental health professionals to pose them not a risk to others. Period. And I don't think we're ever going to see that type of legislation make its way anywhere.
Doesn't feel like we'll see that in our lifetime. I agree.
Yeah. I hope to be proven wrong, but I sincerely doubt it. Just like I sincerely doubt we will ever see mandated firearm safety training in order to have a firearm.
Yeah. So now that we're this deep down this rabbit hole, I want to just go ahead and point out that our constitutional right to bear arms is solely based on the Virginia Commonwealth. I think so, but it's based on trying to appease Virginia into the colonial America. They wanted firearms so that they could have militia, so that they could keep their slaves in line. That's the basis of the second bill in the Bill of Rights, second right in the Bill of Rights.
So actually, I wrote something about the Second Amendment a long time ago. The main thing, let me read the amendment real quick first. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Plenty of constitutional law experts have debated this. I mean, it's
so well debated.
Yes.
Or thoroughly debated.
Here's the thing. The idea behind it is inaccurate, and it's been clarified by the Supreme Court, actually, in 2008. It was D.C. versus Heller. The court ruled that the prefatory clause, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, stated the intent for the amendment. It just doesn't place any restrictions on the actual scope of the right of the people to keep and bear arms. So it's not that you have a right as an American to have weapons. The intent was very much for the maintenance of a well-organized militia in the event that that organization needed to be deployed for a reason. That much is clear. So we could very easily pass any number of laws placing restrictions on who could own firearms, some of which has already been done. Felons can't own firearms. We just don't push the fact. And we should. Now, as far as the background on the amendment being written to appease Virginia, I don't know that history, but it does not surprise me. And if that is indeed the root reasoning behind the inclusion of the amendment, well, we're well past time to present yet another amendment to the Bill of Rights, or to the Constitution, sorry.
That is the thing about it. We are able to change it. We need to stop looking and trying to figure out what were our forefathers thinking 200, almost 250 years ago, and start thinking about what is best for Americans today. How do we preserve our freedom, and how do we ensure that, but we also ensure the safety of others? Like the idea of a mask mandate and vaccine mandates, I get why you can't say every citizen must have these, but we sure as hell can say, if you want to do business with the United States government, if you want to work in a large corporation, these are some mandates that you're going to have to adhere to, much like we have to wear seatbelts or not drink and drive. Anyway, that was kind of as far down the rabbit hole I was thinking we'd go on that. But there was one other thing. There's one other thing I wanted to point out, and this is like I see this brought up so many times, and it's like the character of the men that Rittenhouse shot. It's like there's been
doesn't matter.
Exactly, that is a red herring. It does not, because they could have been saints. I don't know. They could have been the best. It could have been. I don't know. It could have been anybody. It does not matter. He didn't know that they were bad people. He didn't know that they were good people. He shot them. Looking at this trial, I can't really be upset at the jury. They were set up for failure. Actually, the jury did exactly what the jury's supposed to do in a broken system. The judge made sure that Rittenhouse was going to get an acquittal. He did everything he possibly could do to ensure his acquittal. And if Rittenhouse had been black, this would have been a very different, very excruciatingly different trial.
So I agree on the last point. I'm not sure I completely agree on the judge making sure he did everything to shape the outcome. And
I think everything that he could.
Well, here's the reason I say that. There are different laws and things in place at different levels of government that mandate what a judge can and can't do as well. And over the years, more and more restrictions have been placed on allowing any type of sway or bias or non-objectivity in general by the judge, basically reducing their leniency. And for good reason. Prior to a lot of those restrictions, judges were really, or could really just rule based on personal thought and opinion and belief. And so that's where different things were born to try to curb that and rein that in. Unfortunately, some of those things have also been horrifically negative, like mandatory minimums and specific punishments, guidelines there, that it's a very problematic thing. The only reason I mention it, I agree in principle, and I agree in this case that's probably what happened, but I don't want to make it sound like that's the only factor at play, because I don't know what he was legally required to do and not do, either based on local statutes and laws.
But that's what I'm saying. The problem is that this is a system designed.
I can barely hear you all of a sudden.
Excuse me. How about now?
That's better.
So I guess, that's kind of the point that I make, is that he did, I don't think that the judge did anything illegal. I can't remember if we're going to go with unethical or immoral.
Well, I think what I'm trying to point out isn't so much that it's trying to say that I can't pass any kind of judgment on the judge's motivations. And so I'm willing to say that I believe in this case the actions themselves were geared toward crafting an outcome. I don't want to say the motivation was geared toward crafting an outcome.
Oh, I don't know that the motivation was geared toward crafting an outcome. I don't know if I implied that or even outright said that. That was a misstep on my part. But The problem is that we have a system designed to, basically it was designed to allow this sort of vigilant, or it's perpetuating this ability to be a part of this sort of vigilantism, pro-gun culture.
We absolutely have a broken system. We have a system where a lot of the things that shape the ability of the system, what the system is capable of actually doing, are restricted or hampered by things that are crafted specifically for the benefit of a group of people.
Yes. That's the biggest that's the bigger problem here.
Right. And you can rephrase that. You could say that the system is also the victim of a number of statutes and laws and policies that are crafted to oppress a specific group of people. They're the same thing.
Yes. Those were my thoughts.
Yeah, it wasn't, since I wasn't entirely sure without the extra detail in the notes, kind of where you wanted to go with it. I think I want to circle back to one of the big issues that I have, which is this chain of events outside of the scope of the justice system itself. Just this chain of events is really ominous for how things could play out going forward.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think reading some of these notes here that you put in, I was like, this is like one of the first times where, even though I feel like this is the best we've ever been, this is a thing that has come in the post Trump administration era, where I feel like maybe we're going to take a step back.
It definitely feels that way. So I've got a few links that I put in our notes. I'm not going to read through all the notes I have. They were just kind of there for me to remember what each article was about. But I will link all of them in the show notes for anyone who wants to delve into reading. But one of the things that struck me reading stuff post-verdict, that on Telegram, the leader of a neo-Nazi group wrote that the verdict gives, quote, "Good Americans legal precedent and license to kill violent commies without worrying about doing life in prison if we defend ourselves in a riot," unquote. Now, number one, you should automatically know that a leader of a neo-Nazi group is out of his fucking mind in the first place and should not be someone you listen to. But unfortunately, the way that's phrased and the inherent comparison to communism that people think of if they hear anything with the word social attached to it, makes this very troubling.
And then you ask them, what does this have to do with the workers controlling the means of production? And then they look at you like they have no idea what you're talking about. Because they have no idea.
To me.
It's because they have no idea what they're talking about.
I know. And we can do a real deep dive into that at some point. But at a high level, if you believe that you hear the word social something or socialism and you immediately think communism, you have been brainwashed, plain and simple, to equate those words with an extreme version of socialism, with the example of the extreme version of socialism. And so by comparison, if you wanted to think of conservative and you immediately equated that with the Puritans, maybe that would be close. Still not quite as extreme, but at least close. So if you say you're a conservative and I turn around and call you a Puritan and you're angered, maybe that gives you an idea that you don't know what the hell you're talking about and should listen a little bit talk to somebody. Try to understand what exactly that means.
Listen to episode 63.
The other thing that I wanted to mention, and I don't normally give much credence to public figures or celebrities speaking their piece.
But let me just say, we're going to end this like a good Matrix movie.
Yes. So, Rage Against the Machine slammed the Rittenhouse verdict. And I loved what they said.
Please.
And so I want to actually read the excerpt that I have.
Was this when I was reading your notes? I was in my head. I was hearing the voice of Tom Morello saying,
I believe
this.
so.
Yeah.
I did not see the original statement. I followed the link after the fact. My exposure to it was this article that I linked.
If I can find audio of him saying it, I will get it to you.
Yeah, that'll work. I think they did it in a press release, though.
Yeah, unlucky.
So here I'm going to just read. What's that?
I read it in his voice.
Okay. So here I'm just going to read excerpts from the article. Again, the article will be linked in the show notes. What defines innocence in America? Tamir Rice was executed by police for playing with a toy. Nobody was charged. Ahmed Albury went jogging and was murdered in broad daylight. Kyle Rittenhouse armed himself and killed people who were fighting for racial justice. He claimed self-defense. This is the settler logic of America's founding myth. Whiteness must cast itself as the victim in order to justify its violence against those resisting its oppression. Welcome to the land of the free, home of the brave.
Know your enemy.
What's that?
Know your enemy.
Yeah. I certainly couldn't have said it in such a way just off the cuff. But it's so obvious since the Trump administration how much fear of others drives action in this country. And unfounded fear at that. Why would I fear someone whose skin is darker than mine? Why wouldn't I want to get to know them like I do my other neighbors? Why would I fear someone who believes something a little bit different than I do? Understanding those other beliefs either makes my belief stronger or leads me down a path toward enlightenment. When did we go from bring me, you're tired, you're poor, you're hungry, to you have to be a white person and a Christian to live in this country?
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.